off and kind of getting the day going. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely not as smooth as, me throwing a rock at the window of my neighbor to say hi. It's not like that smooth, but all things considered, it really inspired me to make my communication with remote artists as smooth as his. So
dude,
I'm always asking him a million questions on how to make it smoother, how to make it better, and yeah,
he seems to be a master communicator, and it seems like I guess we've both taken that as a sage advice from him. So that's awesome.
And he's also a badass mastering engineer too, I'm not trying to discredit his mastering, because he's like a monster. I love it. But also, like, beyond just being a fantastic mastering engineer, he's also this, really inspiring business person and just good friend.
Unreal. All right, so hopefully, if I ever get into a little bit more pop EDM stuff, I'll know who to call. So I've been thinking about adding a brief segment to the show, and I don't have a name for it. Maybe we'll call it the trademark 5 or something. I'm not really sure, but it basically this is probably gonna be the second podcast where it's happening. Where basically we listen to one archetypical track from every guest, and we kind of dissect it, the journey, what went into it, in hopefully about 5 minutes or so. So you sent me a track before we started rolling called "Keep My Cool" by Mr. No Name, if I'm getting this right.
Yep.
Which was really cool. I'm actually because I didn't get to listen to it quite as much as I would have wanted to. I'm just gonna pull it up and have a listen in real time, and I'll just splice it in the edit.
Perfect.
We'll get about 90 seconds of it, and then you could tell us about what went into it.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna just pop it up right now, real quick.
Sounds good.
You obviously can't hear me,
but I can see you bob your head.
Impulse will sometimes take hold. When I get excited, I'm bold. A moment of complete control, no longer imposed by my ghost. I feel like I'm invincible. I forget to think, slip up and shrink. I'm forced to retreat, correct, replay it over again. Oh, when I go home, I distance myself. Can't keep my cool, yeah. I just can't keep my cool, no. We live for the week and not for the day. Surrounding ourselves with souls to take our fears away. So if we all feel a fraction the same.
Yeah, okay, guys, so that was Keep My Cool by Mr. No Name. Yeah, my initial reaction is I love the way the bass and the low end sounds, and I love the
hey, thank you.
The spaces in the production of just like dropping out and coming back in, and that's like the dynamics being really powerful. So yeah, tell me about what the track was like when it fell into your lap.
So this project, I've been working with Noah Sheffy for maybe 2 years now, and this is going to be the first single that comes out at the end of July. So I think this will be out just before this podcast gets put out. And it initially started as, doing a couple singles, and it was under a different project name for like his old band. And it just started morphing and evolving. And we have probably, I think we have 5 singles that are like produced, mixed, and mastered and done and ready to go. And we've just been spending the past 2 years really just getting our ducks in a row. So when this one came out, I guess whatever tense I should be speaking in at the moment.
Either way is good. Yeah.
It's we're doing a pretty big push for it with management helping us out and some PR help and whatnot. So hopefully it'll be doing pretty well. But I produced and mixed this and played drums on it, and I can't remember if I played bass on this one or if it's all programmed. But yeah, he brought this to me as a demo that was pretty sparse, and we just got together one day, and I just was like, oh, this is cool, and we just kind of followed our gut with it. It felt like we knew where we wanted it to go from the very first time that I heard even like the rough demo. Like I knew what it wanted, what it needed, and we just experimented until we executed that. So it was cool to do the drums for that, because we ended up doing what I do a lot, which is programming the drums first and then recording live drums over top of it and editing them so that way they're like rhythmically and phase correlationally in line with the samples. And then, rather than using samples to reinforce the live drums, we're actually using live drums to reinforce the samples. So we're getting the consistency and the beef and like the modernity, whatever, of the samples, but with that kind of intangible, the inflection changes from note to note. And we ended up getting a horn section. Well, that's actually two horn players. One did trombone and tuba, another one did trumpet and flugelhorn. And a lot of trial and error for that too. We wrote out parts for them, had them try it, and then probably scrapped a good chunk of it the day of and rewrote things and, experimented trying to get them to play these like, chorale type sections in the bridge and in the ending. And it weirdly came together pretty easily, all things considered, considering how we had to like rewrite things and scrap some stuff. But it just felt like all of the times that we changed stuff, it wasn't because, oh, this isn't working, or this is a stupid idea. It was more like, oh, I think we can do something cooler. I think we can do something that works even better. And that's a really fun situation to be in when you're problem solving, because you think it can get even better rather than, oh, this sucks. How do we make it unsuck?
Right. Totally.
And then, mixing it was not as hard as it sounds. I think that one probably has like 140, 150 tracks, something like that, which is pretty typical for a lot of the productions that I do.
Right.
But it's also with Noah's stuff, with the Mr. No Name stuff, there's a lot of vocal layers. So I'd say most of the songs we did together have at least 40 or 50 tracks of vocals. A lot of them are split up.
I hope you're sending them out for tuning.
Yes. Indeed. I didn't for the first few, but then once I started working with my friend Lucas Gino for the vocal editing stuff, I was like, okay, Lucas, hi. Noah, here's Lucas. He's going to handle all this so I don't go crazy and jump out my studio window. Because there's just the quantity. I mean, he's a fantastic singer, so it's not a matter of, it's a lot less of like fixing things. It's more a matter of like the vocal lining of 9 harmony parts. It's like the tightening of it and just getting it that really, really finessing that huge wall of sound that we were going for.
Wow, love it. What was that organ? I guess maybe Rhodes or toy piano sound.
Oh, so that was a combination of 3 different VSTs that we reamped. So I do a lot of reamping for stuff. Tell me about it. Yeah, so we reamped the drums too, I believe, actually. But with the keys, we had, I believe, one of them, 2 of them, maybe all 3. I think they might have been different Arturia presets. I think like one might have been like the whirly and the piano and an organ or something, kind of all blended in together. But then I have a friend down the street that has a great studio, Gary, and he will take the files that I send him and he'll set up, like a reamping station out in his main room, and I think he played it through a Bassman or something, and capture like a close mic and then some like overheads and then some like far room mics that I can kind of piece together what I want in different sections. Also blended with the DI. But then what we did with the drums, I do something that I haven't seen anybody else do to the degree that I do it anyway. I'm definitely not claiming to be the first person to do this, but I will say that more people should do this. But I've seen people reamp snare drums where if the snare's not getting enough crack, like they'll send the snare drum track through a guitar amp that's like laying on its back with the snare upside down on top of it. So that way, every time the snare plays, it's like activating the actual physical snare wires on the drum. And then they'll mic that and whatever. And we do that, but I also do it for the kicks and the toms, because as a drummer, like one of the big things that for me makes a live drum set feel like a live drum set and program drums feel like program drums is the inclusion or absence of sympathetic vibrations. So like when you hit the kick drum, the snares buzz a little bit. When you hit the floor tom, the snares buzz a little bit. So what I do for a lot of the productions, even if they are primarily programmed, I'll send the snare track, by itself through like a reamping rig, and it goes through the amp and through the snare drum, and then I'll have a close mic, 2 overheads, 2 room mics, but then I'll send the kick drum through that as well. I'll gain stage it so that way it's not pumping the crap through the snare drum, and I might use like a noise gate a lot of times to really just make it real short.
Yeah,
but just to get that extra little like that little like crunch that happens when you hit the kick drum.
Yeah, wow.
And the same thing for the toms. Like I'll usually have to noise gate them much more aggressively, but again, just adding that little bit of snare drum sizzle to even the tom hits, so that way, even if the kick, snares, and toms are Frankensteined together from different sample packs, and they're like the snare drum is like 3 different snares, but then like the toms are from a totally different pack, we're kind of using that reamping sympathetic vibration layer, as quiet as it ends up being in the mix, that kind of helps tie the room together, so to speak.
Yeah,
yes.
Big Lebowski reference, baby.
Yeah. So doing that to the drums, and then doing that to the keyboard as well, just
wow,
it does so much. So it's way beyond just guitar reamping. It's just like, well, for the keyboards, I forget if we played it through. I think it was through a Bassman, but then instead of having the snare drum on it, we set up stereo room mics and stereo overheads, so we could still get some distance from that. And I'll do that very frequently. For if there's a band that is going for more live sound, but because of COVID, they're just recording everything DI, but they can't really, they're doing the best that they can. I'll even obviously we can reamp the guitars, but I'll try to reamp the keys through the room too. I'll play back the drum tracks in the room, like through a PA speaker or something, something full range, just so we can try to add that little 2%, that almost felt but not heard ambience you get from them playing in the room. Like we're introducing that naturally and introducing the same room rather than trying to, artificially create that with a reverb send. Yeah,
wow, this is so interesting. And you get that kind of saturation distortion thing as well, I feel like.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's cool. I never even thought about doing something like that. But I guess, the merits of, where you're coming from, I'm a bass player, so I probably would be less likely to think about where a drummer's coming from with the sympathetic vibrations on the snare drum, because that's just not, it's not my instrument.
Yeah.
So you bringing your drum player savvy into that situation is really cool.
Yeah. I feel like if you're like, what this is missing? The snare buzz when I hit the 5th fret. I really wish I had more of that. That's, if you really needed to fake something sounding live, you could do dumb shit like that, but I wouldn't recommend that specific thing, but I'm sure there's probably a situation that would actually be helpful. If you're trying to sneak in, let's say your ghost recording bass parts from a live album, or a live recording, and the bass sounded like crap in the actual in the moment, and the DI was cutting out or something, and you're trying to re-record over it, and you want to sound a little bit more natural. There are, it's kind of like a post-production trick to make it sound more like it's in that space. That's I digress. That's a whole nother.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's listeners, just keep your mind open and do crazy shit.
Yeah.
I guess that's, okay, dude, this has been a really awesome interview, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I've learned a lot. I guess my last question for you was, if you were coming up today, 2020, obviously a lot has changed since you began. What's something that you learned along the way, or you did right at the very beginning, or you didn't do right at the very beginning, something that you just think is key to having success in this game that you wish you knew, or you somehow figured out at the beginning of your journey?
I would say, I'll try to keep this short. This kind of goes back to what we talked about before the interview. I would say really try to keep an open mind about the role that you take in a project. And even if it's not what you want to do primarily, anything that you can learn from being in that position will, if nothing else, help you to better communicate with other people on your team as you're going. So the example that I use is, when I was 4, I started playing piano, and then in 4th grade, I started playing clarinet in elementary school, and I sucked, but that's fine. And then in 8th grade, I wanted to join the marching band, and they didn't have any openings, but one of the trumpet players just quit. So they said, hey, if you just march around and fill that hole in the drill, then next year